Good morning, and thank you all for being here. This is the DAO's regular Monday morning press conference. We will be going over some interesting data and some problems with data around gun violence and homicides in a moment. But the second topic that we will discuss is also of great interest, and it has to do with the cases of Maurice Allen and Cristina Kolenda. That's Kolenda. These are two defendants who have been involved in a series of robberies. They were, and a non-fatal shooting. They were arrested for robberies that occurred in September, back in October, have been in custody since then. They are now rearrested for additional robberies. This is the beauty of great detective work. It's the beauty of actually having the ability and the toolkit to do some forensics, including telephone forensics. And it's also an investigation that is ongoing. Soon enough, we will know if there were even more of these incidents. What unites all of these incidents, aside from the fact that these are terrible crimes, is that these are crimes against workers. They're crimes against people who stand behind counters or who work in small businesses, for the most part. They are crimes against those businesses and the owners of those businesses. These are the kinds of crimes that are utterly unacceptable and very difficult for people who are retailers trying to work in the city. So we are pleased that these two have been brought to justice, and we look forward to vigorously prosecuting these cases. Let me start out by introducing some people who are here. We have Robert Listenby, First Assistant. Joanne Pescator, who's the chief of the DAO's Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, a unit that now has gotten even bigger to encompass shootings where there is no injury whatsoever. We have Fernanda Sandoval, that's F-E-R-N-A-N-D-A, Fernanda Sandoval, S-A-N-D-O-V-A-L, who works with the DAO's Gun Violence Task Force and will be speaking specifically on the Maurice Allen and Cristina Kolenda cases. Bill Fritzy, who is the chief of that unit, was hoping to be here, but he is right now doing the hard work and was unable to attend today. ADA Deb Watson-Stokes is here, senior advisor on professional development and special projects, many of which do include gun violence projects. And finally, we have Mark Pittman, P-I-T-T-M-A-N. Mr. Pittman is with the DAO's CARES unit. As I'm sure you know, the CARES unit provides intensive services in the first 45 days to the survivors, co-survivors of homicides, and he will give a report. So our speakers today, in addition to me, will be Fernanda Sandoval and Mark Pittman, probably in the reverse order. Now, I want to give you some data, but I have to give you a caveat because I know that there's a lot of interest in what has been going on with some improvements in terms of gun violence and homicides in Philadelphia. What I need to warn you is that if you go to the publicly available data from the Philadelphia Police Department, something that I have relied upon, something I have found to be incredibly useful, like I think most people in this field have, you will find that there is an error, and I'm going to caution you about that error. The error is this. The total number of homicides, according to PPD, through the end of 2022 last year was 516. The total for the whole year, 516. That is correctly reflected on that data. However, the number of homicides year to date, in other words, the number of homicides in 2022 on this date, which is the 13th of November last year, is incorrectly showing that same number, 516. Well, it wasn't 516. And it also does not mean that there's a 30% reduction. By putting in the wrong number, which I'm sure is just an honest mistake by good people trying to do a good job, but by leaving that number in there, and it's been there for over a week, it provides some misleading information about the data, which we have gone out of our way to try to correct. The total homicides year to date today is 363. That's 2023 year to date, 363. Even though the PPD database shows 516, that's incorrect. the actual number for 2022 year-to-date was 459. And the year before, 479. So let me give you that again. Year-to-date this year, 363. Year-to-date last year, 459. Year-to-date 2 years ago, 479. So you are seeing a reduction on this date as compared to the same date last year of 96 fewer homicides. And if we look 2 years ago, back to when the pandemic was in, let's just say, fuller effect, this is a reduction of 116 homicides as compared to this date 2 years ago. The percent reduction this year compared to last year, the correct one, not the incorrect one that says 30% on the PPD website, but the correct amount is 20.92% reduction. And the news gets even more interesting if you look at the PPD's weekly report for shooting incidents, because obviously not every homicide is a gun homicide. A lot of them are, but not everyone is. So if we're talking about gun violence, you want to look at the number of shooting incidents. Well, they are down 23.09% as compared to last year. And if you look at the number of shooting victims, and this is the highest reduction I've seen all year. If you look at the number of shooting victims, it is down 27.37%. 27.37% as compared to just last year. And remember, last year came after a year of reductions. There was an 8% reduction in homicides the year prior. So obviously something is going on, and it is also obvious that we have a very long way to go. But these are noteworthy, significant, remarkable declines, especially this late in the year. Simply put, we are talking about 9 or 10 people who are making it through every month who would not have made it through that month the year before. 9 or 10 every month who are not being cut down and killed. The number of homicides that PPD is showing for the week of November 4th through November 10th, 2. Now compare that to the height of the pandemic when the average was about 1.5 per day or 10.5 per week. This is 2. When we look at the number of non-fatal shootings, that's 16. And as we look at the number of gun or gun violence incidents, meaning either possession of a gun that is illegal or the commission of a crime with a gun, we see the number of incidents, 96, the number of arrests, according to PPD, 65, and the number of cases open and charged by this office, 64 out of the 65 that we saw. The cash bail, needless to say, continues to fail us, although I will say that in this particular case, in the case of Maurice Allen and Christina Colenda, between detainers and bail, fortunately, they have been in custody since their arrest in October. And I say fortunately for all the reasons that you will gather when we hear from Fernanda Sandoval about what these two people have been doing. It is my pleasure at this time to call forward Mr. Mark Pittman of the DAO's CARES unit, who is going to provide a report on some of the incredibly important activity that CARES does relating to survivors and co-survivors of homicides. Mr. Pittman.
First and foremost, good morning to everyone. My name is Mark Pittman. Let me just tell you what we do for CARES. There's recently that I will go out to help families. And just a case in point, just to give you an idea or a true story, that in this situation where what we do is when we go out there to provide help and support for the families. That means giving them counseling, giving them information about what they need. Because what happens is when we call these families are going through a traumatic situation. And what we do for 45 days, we call these families. You have no idea what these families go through when we call them. We have families that's crying over the phone. We have families when we out there in the streets, they're crying. They want help, they need help. So what CARES do is we provide that support system for them. We give them the care that is needed for them, provide the support, such as counseling, VCAP, which is the Victim Compensation Assistance Program. Some of these families don't have the funding, so they have support from the CARES unit that actually helps them to get them where they need, to get them for 45 days. Sometimes 45 days is not enough. We go out and give them even the more support. So that way, when they can come back out, they can come back out to society and be able to rest and be able to help with the community as well. So that's my little story, but here's the other story. The other story is that we are there. CARES is there to do the support that is needed for the city of Philadelphia. North Philly, South Philly, Germantown, no matter where it is. But the fact of the matter is, we're there to support. And guess what? With the help that we get from the city of Philadelphia and the community, we want to thank you, because we care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. It is now my pleasure to introduce Fernanda Sandoval, who, like so many other of our young attorneys here, is doing an absolutely fabulous job, well beyond her years of experience, so I guess that makes her a future. Now, my pleasure to introduce the future, Fernanda Sandoval.
Good morning. I want to first start off with saying thank you to the Philadelphia Police Department and its detectives for the work that they have done on this matter, and specifically bringing to our attention that these two individuals. This case was initially referred to the Gun Violence Task Force as two robberies that occurred at nail salons. These robberies occurred on the same day of September 23rd of 2023. They happened about 3 hours away from each other, 4:30, located at 1100 West Girard Avenue at a nail salon, the Happy Family Nail Salon. And then approximately around 7:30 p.m., another robbery occurred on 2400 Aramingo Avenue at the Nails in the City. These two robberies were referred to the Gun Violence Task Force because one of the robberies, namely the one at 7:30, did conclude with a non-fatal shooting to a nail technician that did chase after one of the suspects that was involved. She was shot twice in the leg, and she is still on crutches. Detectives in that matter used surveillance camera and high technology to locate the license plate number that was used as a getaway vehicle for an individual by the name of Christina Calenda. It was later found out that she was the registered owner of that vehicle. Detectives, after finding Christina Calenda, did apply and were approved warrants for searching Christina Calenda's vehicle as well as her cell phone. That is when we actually received the information of Maurice Allen, who was one of the perpetrators who was actually involved in the robbery of those nail salons. The Gun Violence Task Force unit in the District Attorney's Office ensured that these individuals stayed in custody while more investigation was still afoot. As the detectives, through the past months, actually analyzed the cellular dumps using cell phone analysts, and were actually able to determine the call detail records and the precise locations of both Maurice Allen and Christina Calenda. They actually worked in conjunction with the Gun Violence Task Force to make sure that these individuals were actually brought to justice, given the fact that there was other robberies that they were involved in. The first dating back to August 21st of 2023, located at 5461 Ridge Avenue at the CC Creamery in Roxborough, where two individuals, again in a similar fashion, approached the cashier and demanded money from the cash register, and a getaway vehicle, which Christina Calenda was actually present in. It was through cell phone records and call detail records that we were actually able to determine the exact and precise locations of these individuals, and we were able to determine that they were present at the time of the robbery. Additionally, there was another robbery that occurred on August 28th of 2023, approximately around 7:40, at the Dunkin' Donuts located at 5001 Rising Avenue. That cashier was held similarly at gunpoint while two men entered the store and a getaway driver was outside, namely Christina Calenda. After the investigation of these matters, detectives were actually able to determine that Maurice Allen matched up to anonymous tips that were given by the community for other robberies that occurred in the city. One namely happening on August 11th of 2023, where a pregnant female complainant was walking down the street of the 1900 block of Bainbridge Street. She was held at gunpoint, and luckily, but for not a bystander that was there and present and able to aid her in that situation, she survived that gunpoint robbery. We have actually presented a map of all these places that the detectives are sure that Maurice Allen and Christina Calenda worked as co-conspirators to execute their robberies. It is actually all throughout the city, and we are very shocked at the fact that most of these institutions are locally owned by retailers, by individuals who are just trying to do their job every single day. In the end, I will be prosecuting these cases moving forward, and I've spoken to all the victims in these matters, specifically the individual that was shot at the Nails in the City salon. She is still recovering, and she has not been able to return to work. This case is yet another great example of the Gun Violence Task Force in the District Attorney's Office and the Philadelphia Police Department working hand in hand to ensure that victims are one step closer to justice and that individuals are found regardless of the situation and whether or not we're able to make identifications from surveillance video. We're happy to report that this is a situation where we're happy to announce that these cases will be charged eventually this week, and that Christina Calenda and Maurice Allen are already charged and arrested for the robberies that occurred at each of these nail salons. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ADA Sandoval. So just a couple comments to add to that. We absolutely appreciate our close collaboration and the excellent detective work that went into this, both from the Gun Violence Task Force, which, as you may know, received a large state grant last year in order to have some of the tools that are necessary to do this right. We appreciate all that cooperation and hard work on the part of Philadelphia Police Department, but please bear in mind that the Gun Violence Task Force is actually a collaboration between the Philadelphia DA's office and the attorney and state agents through the Attorney General's office. And so I would be remiss if I didn't point out that in general, the detective work that is done by the Gun Violence Task Force is done in close collaboration with state agents as well. All right, let me see. So Q&A, I will make a point of trying to get to everyone who's on the list. If I miss somebody, please let me know. And if I mispronounce your name, please let me know, because I hate to do that. 3 CBS, I have Nathan, S-L-Y-V-E-S, is that right?
Yes, Silvis.
Silvis. Okay, is it S-Y-L?
S-Y-L-V-E-S.
Okay, my apologies. 6 ABC, Mr. Harris. Okay. 10 NBC Telemundo, Jaime Becerril.
Present.
Yes, sir.
If you can answer in Spanish, please.
Yep. We can try.
Try. Do you want me to ask in Spanish or English?
You can ask in Spanish. Let's see if I can follow.
Fiscal, ¿cómo se siente de que estos dos malhechores estén arrestados, que puedan ser perseguidos?
Todo el mundo es más seguro hoy porque tenemos en custodia en una cárcel 2 personas que han robado a mucha gente en sus tiendas, un señor Maurice Allen y una señorita Christina Calenda. Están donde tienen que estar, en la cárcel. Antes que hagan más crímenes, más robos, antes que causan heridas y sufrimiento a más gente. Y por eso intentamos proseguir de una modo bien fuerte.
Los números que habló de la policía y que los números de asesinatos que han bajado, ¿eso qué significa para la ciudad? ¿Está bajando realmente el crimen?
Lo que vemos, primero, es que tenemos que trabajar más duro, podemos hacer más y tenemos que hacer más para reducir el número de crímenes, de violencia, incluso crímenes con armas. Sin embargo, lo que vemos en este año es una reducción grande en la cantidad de crímenes de violencia y una reducción grande en homicidios, asesinatos y también en crímenes de armas. Claro que queremos más, pero tenemos noticias que son buenas en términos del rumbo, la dirección, a dónde van estos números.
Can I do one more last?
You can. Hopefully my Spanish will kick in eventually, but yes.
La última pregunta. Fiscal, ¿sabemos algo de los robos que se están llevando a cabo fuera de los bancos?
Fuera de los bancos.
Hay un crimen organizado que hemos sabido de casos que han robado afuera de los
When you say afuera, you mean outside of banks or inside of the banks?
Outside of it.
Okay, robberies that are occurring outside of banks.
Yes, that's
All right, let me just speak to my folks here for 1 second. See if they have more information than I have on this at this time. Obviously, the FBI is generally very involved with any robberies of banks and often very interested in activity in front of banks. But let me see if we have more information right here. Do we know anything about a bunch of robberies outside of banks?
News, I know a lot of it in Delaware, I don't know if that any here specifically, but they're robbing people when they come out of banks.
I'm afraid we don't have any information on that today, but thank you for your question. All right, let me see. Channel 10 NBC, Mr. Marcucci. All right. Cheyenne Corin. I'm good. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, Cheyenne
Corin.
Corinne. If my memory serves me correct, with the two nail salon robberies, when it first happened, I spoke to one of the owners who described the robbery suspects dressed in women's Muslim clothing. And I believe that police also described the robbers as that as well. Are you able to speak to that at all, or how they were dressed, or any type of disguise that they were wearing?
What I can say is that this is a very active investigation. There were disguises involved, which, obviously has its purpose, and the purpose is to try to conceal identity. But I don't want to get into a lot of specifics simply because we do not consider this investigation to be complete, but you are absolutely correct that disguises were used, disguises that covered essentially the entire body were used in carrying out some or all of these robberies. Do you have any other questions? That's it, okay. John Leonard.
No questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. McDonald, Tom McDonald. The one I can't afford to miss.
One time, I'll give it the rest of my life.
But that was me, that wasn't you, although you did a good job of hiding behind the pillar there. But
Now that summer is over and we're into the colder weather, do you usually see a drop-off in homicides and shootings because more people are inside?
So the answer is that on a national basis, yes, there is usually a seasonal trend. You generally see reductions in crime as the weather gets colder or it gets rainier. That has been historically true in Philadelphia, but obviously it's not true every single week, it's not true every single day. But we do tend to see that, yes. That's part of the reason that the year-to-date comparison is so important, though, because the year-to-date comparison kind of equalizes for seasonal effects in just a general way. It equalizes for are people back in school or not. It equalizes for, anything that is seasonal in nature.
So with 6 weeks left, I would gather you're hoping for an end-of-the-year number that's considerably less than last year.
Absolutely. We understand that these are not numbers, these are people, and we understand the terrible toll that continues to be suffered in terms of gun violence in Philadelphia. But I will tell you this, and I think it's important to note. The Atlantic magazine a few months ago did an article in which they predicted that this year in the United States would be the largest one-year reduction in recorded criminology and homicides, the largest in the history of the United States. And they looked at, if I recall correctly, about 90 different cities, and they found at that time, a few months ago, that the reduction in homicides was about 12%. Even then, Philadelphia's reduction was significantly higher based upon what I understand to be the most recent numbers. It looks like we're at 20.92% reduction. Now, I don't know if that reduction has accelerated or decelerated in these other cities, but the point is that not only are we looking at the biggest national drop in homicide in recorded history, but we are looking at what may be a much larger drop in Philadelphia for the second consecutive year. Not good enough, it's never good enough, but certainly it is a positive indication in terms of what's happening with schools being open, with organized sports being in full effect, with a level of investment by keeping swimming pools open in the summer, levels of preventative engagement, but also there's definitely good news on the modern enforcement side as you're seeing now. Some of this grant money that was provided, some of the tools that are held by the Gun Violence Task Force, some of the investment PPD has made in having more detectives who can handle what, thank goodness, is a shrinking number of homicide cases and shooting cases. Some of that investment is paying off. And, to me, that is really wonderful news to see modern prevention and real investment in prevention holding hands with modern enforcement. I think it's really remarkably good news.
If I may follow up, there is going to be a new mayor, a new council president, and I understand that you were at the Working Families Party Victory Party last week. Two members of the Working Families Party. Do you expect to see a major increase in funding for some of the programs that you endorse so wholeheartedly?
You are correct in all of that. I should point out, though, I spent most of the evening celebrating Sherelle Parker's victory with the mayor-elect, not only at the event, but actually up on the stage. And if any of you would like a photograph of the two of us together, holding up our finger just like this to support her slogan, One Philly, a united and collaborative Philly, I'll be happy to provide a copy of that photo. You know, it's interesting to me because those parties were all held on the same street. Someone understood deeply that this is a collaboration. And even if you call it the Working Families Party, or if you call them Progressive Democrats, which in my mind is basically what they are, whatever you call it, they were both located so that everyone who went to one had the time to go to the other and then go back again. I actually went back and forth between these two parts. But I will, two parties. But I will say this, your question is, do I expect to see more investment? I am excited about the new administration that is coming in. I've known Mayor-elect Parker for many years. She was kind enough to support me twice when I ran. And, you know, she and I have had many, I think, very meaningful conversations. I am very hopeful that she'll be very proactive, that she will be open to modern ideas on enforcement, modern ideas on prevention. And I'm also very excited about some of the developments in council. I'm really looking forward to working with so many new personnel. Obviously, part of the reason we have so many new people in council is several of them left to run for mayor, but it created a lot of openings. You know, Rue Landau is someone I've known for over 30 years. Nick O'Rourke is someone who I've known for a very long time. And I don't single them out because I have a lot of friends on council, including, you know, Isaiah Thomas and the expected council president, who have been very supportive of the work we can do. But I'm very hopeful that we will see things moving quickly, moving in the right direction, that we'll have a lot of common ground. And where we don't, I'm very hopeful that we will have partners who can sit down, talk it through, look at what the evidence says, and then move forward.
Of course, if you call them Progressive Democrats, their election would be a violation of the city charter. Because the Working Families Party being a separate party, they get the reserve spots and not the Democratic spots set aside for the majority party of the term.
Well, you know, let's just talk about it. I consider myself a lifelong Democrat. I am a registered Democrat. I have run twice as a Democrat, and I fully support the Working Families Party. Part of the reason there is a Working Families Party is that the Bob Bradys of the world spend more time kicking sand on the left wing of the Democratic Party than they do kicking sand at the Republicans. How much yes money was in Bob Brady's back pocket this election cycle, Tom? So no, I don't think that there's any issue at all with people who have voted for Democrats many times becoming or registering as Working Families Party's candidates. I don't see a problem there. What I do see is that my Democratic Party needs to embrace its future, and its future is progressive. Its future is black and brown and broke. Its future is drawn to the Working Families Party because old line Democrats, unlike the Republicans, don't know how to get out new votes. Thank goodness the Working Family Party does.
You know how many members there are of the Working Families Party?
How many members? I don't know. Can I be a member if I support their candidates, vote for them, and like what they do?
Registered members.
I mean, no, I don't. I don't know the answer to that question. Well, and I say this respectfully to Tom, and I don't mean to be sassy with you. I'm not. But do you know how many votes Nick O'Rourke and Kendra Brooks got when Kendra became the first third-party candidate in 135 years to be elected? Do you know how many thousands and thousands of votes Nick O'Rourke got more than the Republican candidates, of whom there are many registered? And the answer is they got enough to win. And that's because a whole lot of people appreciate what they're doing for working people, what they're doing for families, and that they stand for something that goes a little bit beyond rusty machine politics. It is a rusty machine with some shiny parts. All right. Let's see. Sherry Stone, Philadelphia Tribune.
I was wondering if the Happy Family nail salon, the barbers, is something to an ATM here? Do they have an ATM? I wonder if that's the same one.
Fernando?
Yes, I believe, hello, I believe it actually was from the cash register itself, that they were able to get the money that they left with. Yes.
Sherry, anything else? Okay. All right, Mr. Cipriano, big trial.
Mr. President, last week I asked you about your disappearance for 2 weeks last May during the Democratic primary, when you refused to discuss how you covered up credible allegations of domestic abuse made against your former deputy campaign manager, Leo, by a paralegal at the DA's office. The paralegal who was subsequently fired for chief executive. Last week, with Mr. Leo standing at your side, you denied it ever having the same before. So, number one, I didn't disappear. Trust me, I didn't disappear. I'm here now. I didn't disappear back then. It didn't happen. And I must congratulate you on your vivid imagination, unquote. The easily verifiable facts are these.
Is this a question, sir? Because it feels like paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of things you've said before.
Yeah, no, things you said before, sir. Yeah,
Do you have a question? If you have a question, I'd like to hear it.
I do, sir. Okay, so the easily verifiable facts are these. At a press conference on May 2nd, when I asked you about Owen Stewart resurfaced as the campaign director for mayoral candidate Olympia, you refused to answer any questions. Then you disappeared without an explanation for 2 weeks. On May 15th, at the press conference the day before the Democratic primary, in your absence, Mayor Kennedy gave a speech you, sir, traditionally give, warning the, quote, enemies of democracy, unquote, not to meddle with Philadelphia elections. When I asked Mike Lee, then your chief of staff, why you weren't there, you weren't there. He replied, quote, he's unavailable today, unquote. And when I asked Mike Lee if he knew why, he replied, quote, no, unquote. So, sir, with the microphone in front of you, why don't you explain which of those facts I got wrong, or in your words, made up with my, quote, vivid imagination, unquote?
I mean, the short answer is that, in my opinion, you got most of your facts wrong. That's the short answer.
Which one, sir?
How about this one? Excuse me, may I speak, or are you going to disturb this entire conference? You have some journalists here. You might want to give them a little respect.
I've been a journalist longer than anybody in this room.
That's a matter of opinion, sir. Depends on what you mean by a journalist and whether or not they observe journalistic standards. May I speak?
What's your answer?
May I speak?
Yes, what facts?
Are you done? May I speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you suggest, for example, to the people who are here that I did not do a press conference about protecting the elections, I don't know why you say that, because I absolutely did do a press conference about protecting elections. It occurred here. It was done right after Omar Sabir did another press conference, which was at City Hall. Did you miss it, sir? Were you missing for that press conference? Am I missing something?
May 15th, you weren't there. That was the press conference the day before the election. You weren't there.
All right. Do you have any actual questions?
I just asked you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. It's good to see you, Mr. Cipriano. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
We'll take two for